Hi everyone, it's Lauren, and today I'm going to talk about my favourite books that I have read so far this year in 2018, in case you're watching it in the future. This is one of my absolute favourite types of videos to film. It's one of my favourite videos to watch. I just love kind of looking back on everything that I've read and trying to pick out the real winners. So what I did is go through my Goodreads app and have a look at the star rating that I'd given all of the books that I'd read this year. And what I found was actually I've had quite a meh start to the year. Most of the books I've read have just been okay. I had quite a few books that I didn't finish because I really didn't like. So I've got 5 books to show you today, and happily all of these 5 I absolutely loved. Oh, I actually got 6. Oh, I forgot one. Just remembered another book that I must include. And the first one of those is Winter by Ali Smith. And this was the first book I read this year, and it's still one of my favourites. This is part of Ali Smith's quartet of seasonal books that she's bringing out. She started with Autumn last year, and this is the second one in that series. They're not about the same thing, so you can absolutely read Winter without having read Autumn. But I think the reason I love this book, and the reason I hope and expect to love spring and summer even more, is that I feel like my love for it grows cumulatively as I read along with this quartet, because it's so amazing what she's doing. The story in here is a young man who is going home to his mother's for Christmas, and just before that happens he breaks up with his girlfriend. So he finds a random woman on the street and pays her to pretend to be his girlfriend to come home and meet his mother. And then at the same time his aunt, who has not seen her sister for many years, also comes home, and then they have this very strange and strained family dynamic over Christmas. But the themes that she's hitting in this book are just so current, and it's very much about this post-truth era that we're in, and kind of whether anyone can truly remember history. And it's, you know, about kind of fake news, but in a very subtle way. It's looking at the nature of truth and memory, and also the nature of the environment and the responsibilities that we have now, so that future generations can enjoy the environment, what we're doing to the planet. It's looking at art and the idea of art being enjoyed for art's sake and for truth, and also art being a little bit more commercial as well, for commercial purposes, and kind of whether something has to be true in order for it to be art. It's just amazing. I'm just in awe of what she's doing here, because this book somehow, without it being very literally about 2017, this book basically is 2017, and Autumn basically was 2016. Like, she's just really hitting the sort of I guess zeitgeist. I don't know if that's really the right word that I mean here, but it's just like that, the cultural feeling amongst the populace of that year. She's just bringing forth so well, and I would highly recommend you get into this. And then I had a book that I really enjoyed, and I don't think I spoke enough about it at the time as to how much I enjoyed it, and that was Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. This book, it's just kind of about nothing really. It's about the women who live in the village of Cranford, and it's about their comings and goings. It's extremely episodic, and we look at all of the different people in the village like throughout the years, and how they get on with their lives and how they interact with each other. But it's just so nice. That's a bit of a lame word, but it was just so comforting to read. It felt like a hug in a book. It's just very funny, it's really well observed. The characters, the way they all interact with each other, is just so perfectly done. And I hadn't read any Elizabeth Gaskell before, and now that I've read that, I'm going to read everything she's ever written. I'm going to get straight into North and South next, I think. She says, like 6 months after having read it. The next book I really loved was Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. Now this is a proof, and I must have got this very early, because I read it a while ago, and this isn't out till September. But this is one of those books where while I was reading it, I thought, yeah, okay, this is fine. But it stayed with me so much, and the more I think about it, the more I just think it was amazing. This is about a young girl called Sylvie, whose father is very interested in pre-Roman Britain, in Iron Age Britain. And so because of that, they get involved with this group of students. This group of archaeology students are recreating life in kind of an Iron Age roundhouse. So Sylvie, her dad and her mum are living with these students and trying to recreate what life would have been like in Iron Age Britain. But what this is really looking at is kind of the wider themes of what it means to be British, and that kind of trying to get back to the really roots of the people that lived here before any immigration. It's very much a look at the sort of nationalist feeling that there might be in the UK at this time, very anti-immigration feeling, but it does it so subtly. And typically, because it's a Sarah Moss book, it's also looking very closely at women and Sylvie's place. It's got some feminist leadings in there, and it's also a look at power dynamics between men and women, I guess, but sort of more broadly, because there is a very very subtly abusive relationship between Sylvie's father and her mother and herself, and it's looking at her father's use and abuse of his power within this family, and his status within the family is very domineering character, and it's looking at the climax of that relationship that they all have. And she manages to fit this into, like, I mean, how many pages is this? Like just over 100 pages. It's so short, and she writes so intelligently. She's an academic herself, and although all of her books seem to be very different about very different things, you can always just tell that they're written by her, because she's got such a wide world view, and it comes across so well in all of her writing. Next we have a poetry collection that I really enjoyed, and that is Kumikanda by Kaya Chingonyi. And what I really loved about this collection is I felt like it is so eloquent and so well communicated that I feel like I just really had opened a window into Kaya's head and just understood where he was coming from. And part of that, I think, will come from the fact that we are probably quite a similar age and we grew up in a similar part of the UK. So there's a bit of nostalgia for me on my part there. But also he has very different life experience and family experiences, and there's elements of his life that are very alien to me. And yet I still felt like I understood where he was coming from when he was talking about those instances in his life as well. The name Kumikanda comes from a rite of passage, a ceremony from his tribes in Zambia, where his family are from. And because he moved to the UK when he was quite young, he missed out on going through that ritual rite of passage when he came to adolescence. So this collection is really looking at all of the different experiences that he's had in his life that could be some kind of Kumikanda and be that point where he moved from an adolescent into an adult. So things like going through the death of his parents, and just different experiences like that, and him sort of trying to work out what this man that he's going to be, like what kind of man is he going to grow into. And as I said, just so eloquent, just so well written and so easy to read. I also really want to mention Normal People by Sally Rooney, which I just read and absolutely loved. I featured this in my June reading wrap up, which I'll link here and in the description box below if you didn't see that video, where I go into more detail about the plot and why I liked it so much. I don't see there's any need for me to repeat myself too much in this video, but I did absolutely love it, and it's very similar to her first novel, Conversations with Friends, where she's looking at the relationships between two people and all of the things that remain unsaid, the things that are implied, things that are misconstrued. Her characters are so well formed, and it's just about a relationship between two people going between school and university. I just absolutely loved it. And finally, my favourite book this year, which I nearly forgot to mention, and that is 3 Things About Elsie by Joanna Cannon. And it's because I keep lending it to people and I don't have it in my house anymore. That's why I forgot to like originally have it in this stack. This is about an old woman called Florence who has had a fall in an old people's home. And while she's had her fall, she's looking back on her life. She's looking back on her life in her old people's home with her best friend Elsie, and also things that happened when they were younger. And all of this is triggered by a gentleman joining their old people's home, who is someone she remembers from her life, and she distinctly recognises him, but he's going by a different name. And because Florence is dealing with, well, being old just in general, but also dealing with dementia as well, it's very difficult for her to be taken seriously, that she thinks this man is out to get her, or that he's a person from her past. And she's also kind of confusing herself in her own memories. But what I really loved about this book is it's looking at quite a lot of different characters. It's looking at the effects, big and small, that you can have on another person's life. And it's kind of looking at a normal life, really, kind of a normal life lived, and all of the love and despair that can come up in that life. And although there is this element of mystery where Florence is trying to work out who this man is and what's going on, that's almost besides the point. And there's some things in the book which you guess straight away, which Florence hasn't really twigged yet. And there's other things which Florence has forgotten herself and hasn't told you as an audience, as a reader, audience member I was going to say. So there's kind of this two-way of some things you know, some things Florence knows, and then it all kind of comes together at the end. And it's very, very neat. It's just very beautiful. I found it so emotional, and I don't normally cry at books, and I did cry at this at the end. It's a little bit, you know, it could be a little bit schmaltzy, I suppose. It depends what you like in your reading. It's the kind of world which is built, which is almost like too good to be true. It's not very lifelike in that sense, where kind of everybody's affecting everybody else's lives, but as a kind of allegory for that kind of for that kind of wider idea, I think it works perfectly. So those are the top ones that I've read so far this year for me. I would love to hear what your favourite books have been of the year so far. I would love to know if you've read any of these books already and what your thoughts are on them. Did you like them as much as I did? Did you not like them as much as I did? Have I made you want to read any of these books that you didn't want to read before? I hope I've made you excited about like at least one of them, because these are my favourite books this year. And if I haven't displayed enough enthusiasm, then I'm very bad at my job. Let's have a chat in the comment section and I will see you in my next video. Bye!